Aloha mai kako, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Moana Nui podcast. My name is Moana McAdams, your host, and today's episode is called Lost Tales and Ancient Heirs. Our special guest tonight is someone who I'm really excited to have on the podcast. I'm a big fan of his work, and I've always wanted to have him on and just ask him some questions about his career as a writer and a creator in the independent community. Our guest is Greg Burnham. He is the writer of The Search for Sadaka, Tuskegee Heirs, Broken Glass, Grandpa's Shoes, and so much more. So he has a lot of really cool projects from comics to children's books. And yeah, I love his stories and I'm so excited to have him. So without further ado, we will bring Greg on.
Hello.
Hey, what's going on, Greg? How are you?
I'm good. I am not inebriated. I'm just very sleepy. And not sleepy because I'm lazy, but sleepy because it's been a long day. But I'm going to do this. I'm excited about this. And I'm so glad that you asked me to come on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you. So for those who may not be familiar with Greg's work, you can see a little bit of his work here. This is the project that he's currently working on, and it's live on Kickstarter. We will post the link into the comments if you want to go and check that out. But while we're doing that, we are going to talk a little bit about why this story is so cool. We'll talk about some lost and forgotten tales about history, which is one of the things I really love and is, as you all know, a big part of my mission with the Moana Nui podcast to celebrate the accomplishments of Indigenous peoples and to lift their voices and tell you folks some stories that you may not know about. So, Greg, let's start off with the setting for Search for Sadaka. It takes place in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1920s. So what makes that place so special and what is Black Wall Street?
It's 1921. Black Wall Street is a district in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in which, like, we saw one of the biggest booms as far as Black ownership, Black business, and it just showed that we could, as a people, post slavery, we could still pull ourselves up and really make a huge mark in the world, and there were other cities throughout the United States that kind of did something similar. I do know that with Tulsa, there were people that were coming from all over because they felt like there was a good chance for them to actually thrive there.
Right. Which is like really, really important. I mean, because we're talking about a Black community of Black businesses. I mean, and they're calling it Wall Street for a reason, right? This is a community that is circulating resources amongst themselves, taking care of one another. Everyone is playing their role. You have farmers, you have bank owners, you have, all of these people who, they focus on their thing and focus really on active, which is what I love about being a part of the indie community and being able to talk to creators like you, because I feel like that's my part. I get to share all the amazing things that you guys are doing and let people know because, and when we come together and more folks are talking about it, it gives everyone a stronger voice. So as we go into, we have The Search for Sadaka, and you did the origin story of issue 2, which you launched on Kickstarter last year. In that story, we meet, one of my favorite pages was the conversation between Sadaka and her father. When she gets in trouble and gets taken to her dad's office, and it's like, oh snap. But he talks about, he's talked about some of the businesses in the community, and he's a successful banker, and like he's talking about some of those businesses that have been shut down. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about how, like, why you chose this particular setting, and how you like incorporated those historical facts into your storyline?
So that, and I thank you for saying that. That makes me feel good because I like that was my favorite part. Like that's where after I read it a few times, I was like, mhm, okay. Like, but so that was kind of like a microcosm of what's happened over and over in this country. And I'm sure this is the country that I know most about, but I'm sure it's happened in other places as well, which is like we see it's kind of like a form of gentrification,
Right.
where they're coming in and they devalue your property in a lot of
Mhm.
instances. Sometimes they just flat out destroy it,
Yeah.
but it's they devalue the property, then they come in and buy it up. So um, one of the things, and my inspiration for doing this story, it came in a dream after I watched this documentary, and I always talk about it, and I gotta remember the name. There's a lot of documentaries, but this one really detailed, like explained how the process went. So they go in, they kill people, capture people. Some people flee and get away, and then they go into the houses and they would like take everything, because they're like a lot of this massacre happened based off of jealousy and
Hmm.
envy. So they went in, they pillaged, took anything of value. They were taking so much stuff because the people in the district had better things than a lot of the white people had.
Right.
So they took everything and then they burnt it down, and like most people didn't, they wouldn't give them the insurance wouldn't cover. They said it was a riot, and so the insurance wouldn't cover the lost property, the damaged property. So a lot of people had no way, like that was their life. They had put in their lives into that, in lives. What am I talking about? I told you I'm sleepy. But yeah, so they would they didn't have anything else. So people ended up, the city ended up going back in and taking control of the land after a while. So that was like the fast, super duper sped up version of gentrification. But I just wanted to put that in
Mhm.
because so often we, and I
Uh-oh.
tried to like create, fictional people that were actually affected, because so often we look at it and we say, okay, this happened almost 100 years ago, and you know, these people lost their land, but we never look and like go deep into looking to see who these people were and what the,
Right.
like, so there's like an amazing restaurant, we all can relate to, one of our favorite restaurants, right? And then just imagine if it got put out of business because somebody, what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
that like all of that was like so inspirational to me, and hopefully to get because usually the books that we do are like all ages, so they
Yeah.
can be little kids, but they're still written to where adults can enjoy or whatever. So it's kind of like just exposing people to these processes so they can see them and they can recognize it and understand when it's happening, because it's still happening to this day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Especially in communities of color. That's, it's not just in one city or town. It's
Yep.
found wherever people of color are.
Atlanta, New
Yeah.
York, everywhere.
Hawaii,
Yeah.
DC, Baltimore, like all of these places where it's still happening. And I absolutely love that you said, like, this is like the livelihood of the community. This is where relationships are formed. These small businesses, these families and people who really, like, they know each other, right? Like, they know who belongs in the community, they know who doesn't belong in the community. Um, and, a lot of the issues as far as like police violence, and those kinds of things are because you bring in um, people to police those areas who don't know people. And if you don't know people, you're going to assume the worst, especially
Right.
if you are a Westerner with a European colonization type of mind. So everybody's the enemy. Ooh, scary.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I absolutely love that you brought this into the story, because it serves as as both a history lesson, but also a fun story that you're going along on this journey with Sadaka and her family. So let's talk a little bit about Sadaka. So like, first of all, number one, I love this girl. Like, when I was reading the first couple pages, there's so many times I had to stop and be like, Greg is like in my head right now. Like, this is my girl. Like, she's like, she's like very studious in school, right? Like, she's focused on her studies. She's strong. She's a protector. Like, she's no nonsense. Like, you're not gonna mess around with her. You know what I mean? And she's protecting her cousin, and I'm just like, oh my god, this is like how I was with my little sister.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of like male writers tend to write male characters. How did you get the like the inspiration and perspective on creating a female character?
Um, so this particular instance, like I literally had a dream about a young lady who escaped the rubble of, Black Wall Street. So it wasn't that hard. So like with Tuskegee Heirs, we have like five main characters. Two of them are young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have a daughter. I have a stepdaughter. So and I spent tons of time with them growing up. Now they don't, they're older now, so
Right.
it's not, you don't have all that time, but so just understanding them and understanding the temperament, I felt like it was something that I needed to do. I don't. It's weird because it's not the kind of thing where it's like, okay, this needs to be a girl. It's just kind of what flows, what
Mhm.
feels good, right? So like with Tuskegee Heirs, Ayana, who's the leader of the team, she, of course, is a young lady. That just naturally came when me and Marcus were coming up with these characters.
Right.
So I don't ever want to be like pandering,
Yeah.
um, but then I also understand that there's like a lot of weight attached to writing a young female hero, because there's so many, I mean, we know comics is kind of male driven. There's so
Mhm.
many people that are writing, the opposite, like the female, like female character. I'm trying to say this in a nice way. There's a lot of people that are doing, that do these characters, and they like, you can look at the clothes that they're wearing, you can look at, the body positions, the types of, and you can just be like, come on,
Making it
man.
very sexual and yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah. And then the writing, a lot of times doesn't go more like they're written as objects a lot of in a lot of stuff, and instead of like a true breathing living person.
yes.
When I write characters, I try my best. It's I don't know. I used to think I was crazy as a kid, but now I think it's turning out pretty cool. But it's like I get inside of the characters' heads. You know what I'm saying? So like I know what kind of what food they like and what type of things they would do and they wouldn't do, and I just wanted to make sure that I was able to represent her as a real you know character, not a linear character, but someone who's a person, a real
Right.
person.
Yes, well, I think you did a great job developing this character, even if it's just the origin story. Um, and you're definitely headed in the right direction for sure. Because I've done surveys to women, and like um, because obviously I'm going to write about women. That's it's because I'm a woman, but like I've asked them, like what are some stereotypes that like frustrate you about storylines that involve women, right? And it's basically what you said, like only like visualizing them as an object, a thing for the pleasure of men, and not understanding like the actual real life situations that women go through, and understanding, empathizing with um, their perspective, and those things. So I think you did a really good job with Sadaka. So ladies, if you have not yet heard of this project, you should definitely be checking it out. You're gonna love Sadaka. I love her. She's like my spirit animal. Um, so yeah, and then I especially like there was one part of the story where her father was talking about fighting against bullies who are trying to destroy the businesses, and Sadako was like, "Yes, so you understand, like my you understand what I'm talking about." He's like, "Hold on, young lady."
Right. No, and I've had that with my daughter and my stepdaughter. And when I say stepdaughter, I'm saying that with love and affection.
Yeah.
It's but I've had that where it's like you're trying to teach them logic, and they're both like smart, like super duper smart, and so they end up turning that logic on you and being like, okay, well, since you understand, then you should understand this too. And I'm like, oh, you're right, kid. So I thought that was fun. That was fun to write as well. The whole thing was fun. Yeah, the whole thing was it was fun to write. And I think that's the best part. Like when you're doing this is that part doesn't seem like work. All the other, like the ancillary stuff seems like work, but when you're just sitting down and just, coming up with this stuff, that's the fun part.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I was having fun reading it, so there's a couple of times I have to go back. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's learn more about this, and just paying attention to like all the details. I really like your artist, Shannon Sapinter.
Sapinter, yeah.
Yeah.
He's art of S as in Sam, V as in Victor, S as in Sam on what's that thing? Instagram. He's awesome, and he's a really, really awesome dude too.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love the style, his art style, and um, just everything about it. And of course, Marcus is always with amazing covers.
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, so that's one of my things that I because I have Marcus, so it's like I can always get concepts and kind of have him build certain things out. It's like just so I can see how it looks. So yeah, he's very valuable to have on my team.
Yeah, no doubt, absolutely. So in the search for Sadaka, something happens to her. I'm not gonna do spoiler alert, but she is gonna go on an adventure in search of a mythical ancestor. Is I believe is how you put it. Who's the inspiration for the ancestor, and how how did you find out about this mythical ancestor, and what kinds of research did you do?
So the Queen Calafia, which is it's a fictional tale, and I had to put it here because I always forget how to pronounce it. But in English, it's The Adventures of Esplandian. And so this is like a woman, a black woman who had like an army of all women. Some people say, I don't even know anymore, but some people say that it's like the inspiration for Wonder Woman came from this because it was like an army of, an all female army. There was like griffins that, like would attack from the sky that was rolling with them. And so this guy wrote a novel about it. and it's called, like I said, The Adventures of Esplendian. And it was like 1510, I believe, is when it was written. And so, but anyways, she ended up coming, controlling an island of, called California, which some people say was our California.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it came from. And so I was a history major. I'm always like learning, because it's like I learned, a long time ago. You'll think you know all this stuff, and then somebody will knock over something, and then you're like, you have your whole perspective changed. So what I was doing for a different project that I wanted to do at the time, I was looking at all these different, pieces of evidence that showed, how many people were here before Christopher Columbus. And basically we settled on everybody was here before Christopher Columbus.
Yeah.
The Northern Europeans, the Vikings, they were here. Africans came from both sides. Polynesians, Chinese, like everybody was here, and Christopher Columbus was the last one. So I had learned about the currents off of the west coast of Africa that bring you directly to the Caribbean. It's also no secret that 1492 happened to be the year that the Europeans gained control of Spain. And that's the same exact year that they set sail for the New World. They teach us in school that, everybody thought the world was flat. That's a lie. There's probably more people today that think the world is flat than did back then. It was already, like it was already pretty much common knowledge that the world was not flat. I always contend, they say he was looking for a faster way to, India. I think that's a lie too. I always contend that they knew exactly where they were going. And they had help. Two of the ships were owned by Moors who had been in control of Spain. So I always contend that when they inherited these routes when they gained control of the country. So with that said, that just opens up. And that's what I try to do, like in these books, Tuskegee Heirs and Sadaka. I'm not going to just give away a whole lot of information, but for people that really want it, there are going to be things that you can go research that can kind of open up these little portals. And that's how I always learned. Like I'd have like an OG, somebody give me like one fact, and then I go, searching forever, back before they had things like the internet and all that good stuff.
Right.
So when I did, I found out about, the Mali, what's his name, Abu Bakr, who took 250 ships to, on this route, excuse me, on that route, like I want to say it was like 800 AD, in the 800s. I already took like 250 ships, sent them, and never came back. And so it's like you start seeing all these different things, these Olmec heads and all this stuff. They found all these African bones and all this stuff in South America. So and I don't want to talk forever on that one question, but basically it's like you get all this information to know that we were here. Everybody was here. And then when I was researching, for Sadaka, because there's going to be some stuff that's going to happen with the Grand Canyon and other stuff. And, you start researching and finding out, like, have you ever heard about in the 1930s, there was a guy, he reported in the newspaper that there were Egyptian artifacts found in the Grand Canyon.
I didn't know that. That would not surprise me one bit.
Then they rolled it back. And I think now they say that they were Chinese. any way you want to cut it, it's just more evidence, of all these people that were here. So I just thought it was cool to add, and speak about some of those things. And then, it's fiction, but there's some real things that are spilled into the story, like some of the towns that actually, like, Black people actually settled at, that fled slavery, and we're going to settle. So real cool stuff. I feel like it'll just open up. There's, what it is. We spend so much of our time, and it's not really our fault, because this is what we're forced to do. So we always think about all these other people's, like Greece and Rome and all these other people's mythologies and all this stuff, and we never even focus on the stuff that's right here,
Yeah.
And I know why they didn't teach us, because it would have been empowerment, right? And so they don't need you empowered. But there's all kinds of cool stuff that we can talk about. So I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Because, in school, I remember like I hated history, and it's because it was like history that didn't relate to me. I'm like, what's American history? What? Like, who are these people? I don't. Why do I have to know about them? Like, what about my history? Like my Hawaiian history? They didn't really teach that in my school, at least specifically where I was. And so, yeah, I'm kind of like you. Like I hear different facts, and then I go on my little squirrel, like woo, and then I go down my wormhole, and it's just crazy because there's so much information out there if you, number one, put in the effort to go and look. I actually kind of miss old, like before the internet, when you had like encyclopedias and books that like you open all up. I get lost in that like forever. But
it's
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's just something different. Like it almost feels like you're earning it, whereas now all I have to do is go Google anything I want, and some stuff's gonna come up.
Right. Yeah, and so like I mean, especially on the internet, there's a lot of some information is true, some is not,
Right.
And so I feel like it's still important to actually seek out other sources that are more analog, right? Like actual books and things like that. Like if you look in my library, my study, I have like all these books in Hawaii and specifically ones that are not written. Well, there are some, because some are good, but I look more for actual non-Western authors. Like I want to hear an actual real perspective, right? Because history will give their perspective. That's all we're ever taught. But there's always the flip side of all of those stories. So, and those are the perspectives that I, have made it my mission to to help people hear more of the other side of the coin. When I was actually looking up Califia, I did notice that, well, Wikipedia is always the first one that comes up, right? And they say it's fictional because it's based on this novel that you mentioned. But if you look, there's a couple other articles that are, I think, Africa-based, but there was a couple books mentioned, which I'm like, okay, new books for me to buy so that I can go read those and see what they say too. But a lot of those articles were actually giving like facts and examples of why she was actually real, and this Black community that was out in California, our California, actually existed. And if you understand the power of seafaring peoples, traverse through the Pacific and through the Atlantic, obviously slave trades and all of those, but those were not the first navigators. The first navigators were actually African, Polynesian, like Austronesian, all of those peoples who are actually, I mean, today we're kind of conditioned to think to divide, like these are Samoans and these are Tongans and these are Hawaiians, and these are New Zealanders and Maori and Indians, but they're really all the same people. They have been traveling the seas for like so long, and some have settled, in different places. And as we're seeing more DNA type stuff, like more evidence is showing. I mean, if you look at the Olmec heads, like you mentioned, it's like, look at the features, man. Like, come on, that's black and brown excellence right there. Come on. I mean, like, they look like you. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. And I like, so the way I explain, because I have read, the things that make it factual. I think that or that explain that it's actually real. I feel like what happens is, because we're always taught in school, right? When you're talking about, archaeology and history, stuff like that. If you can't, if the valid sources don't agree upon something, then you can't really state it as a fact because you can be discredited. So I think about like Ivan van Sertima, who wrote what's the book's name? What is his name? I bought it like 65 times. He was the first. His book. I'm sitting right here. But he was the first one where I saw like an Olmec head, and they were here before Columbus.
yes,
And
yes,
a lot of people, even though he brought out all this stuff and everything he says sounds perfectly logical, but a lot of people tried to discredit him, over the years because he was saying the stuff that they didn't want to hear, right? Which is that there are Africans, and they created these great civilizations. It's the same reason why, what do they call they don't call the pyramids in Mexico and South America, they don't call them pyramids, right? They call them temples or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's a pyramid. Well, I mean, it's got the same shape. It's a pyramid. it's a step pyramid. Like, why are we beating around the bush? So I think that for my part, it's like I don't want to just automatically like say this is super duper factual. You know what I'm saying? Because there's these widely conflicting, views upon Calafia, and you know what I'm saying. So it's like I'm gonna tell it just like, ooh, I'm good at holding my tongue. I'm gonna tell it just like some people do, where they make stuff up and you can't tell what's real and what's not. So
right.
And but at the very least, you can go look it up and research for yourself to see is this really something that that's real.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you brought up the pyramids because and it's very easy for people who have not traveled to these actual places and have not actually seen these things to make these bold statements about whatever. So two pyramids I know and have seen and have touched with my own hands are the pyramids of Saqqara in Egypt, and the pyramids in like Chichen Itza and into Central America. Those are like, you can like it's so easy to see the similarities of these cultures, whether or not they were the exact same people.
Right.
It would be extremely hard for them to not be connected in some way. And there's so many sources on YouTube that you can go to and look at these similarities, like these history channels and things that I can get lost in. But anyway, but that's why I always like encourage people to like invest your money. Like, don't buy stuff, buy experiences. Like, save your money, go travel, see for yourself so that you can know for your own self. That's one way of doing research. And like just like you, one of our goals, our stories and stuff, is to encourage people to do their own research too. Like, I don't want you to just take my word for it. Don't. Call me out, whatever. Like, I would actually like you to prove me wrong if you can, but
Yeah.
my more important, goal is to have people to actually get excited, get interested, and go do their own research. And let's have healthy discussion about it. Let's help build each other's perspectives. Like not everybody's gonna have all the same
Just yeah.
information.
It's just like opening people's eyes. Like in the latest issue of Tuskegee Airs, let me see if you can see it here. Our kids go to Rapa Nui or Easter Island.
Mm-hmm.
These structures
How did I miss
are
that one?
things that people need to see, because at least we can start changing the narrative, right? That you're saying, oh, here, I always do this wrong.
That's the
So
Moai.
yes, so at least people can start, having different conversations. Like, it's so crazy because I love GI Joe, and they had an episode, and because I had no idea about any of this, there was an episode way back in like '84 or whatever where they were at Easter Island, and so I bought all the seasons on Amazon during quarantine. Amazon was getting all my money, so I'm watching and I remembered the episode and everything, but I never put two and two together that that's where they were. They were on Easter Island. You know what I mean? And I was just bugging out because it's like they were trying to tell me, they were trying to drop little nuggets in there,
Right.
and but we weren't ready for it. So I'm trying to do similar stuff. Now the funny thing is, we had already planned issue 4 out. We were almost done with it at that time. And when I saw it, I was just like laughing because it's like it's funny how that could have had like a like I could have subconsciously soaked that up. You know what I mean? The story, like the issue, it's like totally different. It has nothing to do with what they did, but it's just funny that this show that I was so drawn to was doing this kind of stuff that I'm doing now, and I wasn't even processing it in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's to me. That's like John and I always say, like that's the ancestors like talking through you. It's those are not really coincidences. Because I have those same kind of epiphanies too. Sometimes when I write, like, I wonder why I was thinking about that because I see it here and I see it here. It's like it's not just you. There's other forces at work. At least that's the way I like to think about it. So.
And I gotta, because you said the ancestors. So one of the craziest things recently happened. I'm talking to my aunt, and she starts talking to me about how they found out that my great great grandmother on my father's side owned a lot of property in Oklahoma. So it's like her and her husband. My family's from Missouri, so we've always, all I've known is Missouri.
Right.
But yeah, they own this property in Oklahoma. They left Oklahoma like in the 1920s. I wonder why. And so now, they're actually going to through the legal process to see if if the stuff was ever properly sold. But it was just so amazing because I've only been to Oklahoma one time, and that was we were traveling and my mom took a wrong turn and I was asleep and I woke up and I was like, these signs don't look like Arkansas signs, Ma. And she was like, I don't know what happened. I was like, I think you're in Oklahoma. But it's like I'd only been there one time, but why I felt, like this really deep connection to it. And then I'm finding out this new information, like, and I'm sitting here like,
Right.
and I was telling one of my friends, I'm not even like the property and all that stuff, that's cool, whatever. But I'm more excited to figure out the story now. So
Yeah.
it's like I want the information so I can try to figure out what happened.
Yeah, putting the puzzle pieces together. That's kind of how I approach things too. Like, oh, um, just studying history and studying my own history, and which will often lead me to the histories of other indigenous peoples, and then back into my history, and it's to see all the different connections. Uh, yeah, and a lot of this didn't really happen when I was Hawaii, but I wasn't really driven up like about it back then. But as I've gotten older, it's like I've always felt um kind of like how like you captured it a bit in Sadaka, how like she feels like the pull of the ancestors, like there's just something like ingrained in you where you have like a warrior spirit in there.
Mhm.
Um and I've always had that as I've since I've been young, but like as I've been researching our family genealogy and things like that, you know, our family actually goes, if you go back into the generations, actually stems back into the chiefs. Like a lot of people don't understand that Hawaii is actually a kingdom. Um,
Mhm.
and we had a monarchy and chiefs and kings, and on in each island had their own rulers, and some islands had multiple just because of like the size of the land and everything. So when you can like identify those connections, it is so powerful. Like, and I think you might have mentioned this in the comic book, but um, where it's understanding that that same brilliance and power is like in your blood too. Like that just to
Mhm.
me that just totally changes your worldview, really. Like 'cause then it's like, and that's why we have never been taught it, because if we understood our origin and where
Yeah.
we came from, right?
Yeah, there's a reason why they typically start us off at the slavery point.
Hmm.
Uh, and there was a fellow I met who did this review on on the book, The Search for Sadaka, and him and I had a couple of other people that mentioned some things that were intentional on my part, but where they said usually when you show people in the 1920s, you don't show them looking the way that we showed them in The Search for Sadaka. Like, so Miss Helen, the principal lady, who's actually based off of my great aunt. Um, the way she's dressed and her hair is nice, and they're not, I didn't, show them looking, poor and all that kind of stuff. Like those things are intentional,
Hmm.
because they're true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's one of the biggest parts. Like people don't understand that, uh, you know, when we were put in situations where we had to create our own, just like I'm a huge sports fan, the Negro leagues, the baseball
Mhm.
leagues. It's like, no, they were sharp. They wasn't, they weren't like below standard or anything like that. Their education, even though we had less, resources, we still thrived in education. Like, it's not what you've always been taught. Like they pick and choose the story. So that was huge for me because I'm one of those, and you may have seen it on, the internet. I'm one of those, oh no, not another slave movie. Not
Right.
another, let's not focus. And even with this story, I didn't want to dig too deep because I don't want to focus on trauma,
Mm.
like our collective trauma. I wanted to focus on like there's a building that's going to be happening. You're going to watch this young lady turn from a know-it-all 13-year-old to a hero, and so that all of that was intentional, and I think we have to do that with the platform that we have,
Yeah.
no matter how big or small. You gonna say something?
No, no. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just think that we have to be intentional with how we show these images, um, we get a chance to center our people
Right.
in our works, right? So I was making a joke with my friends. There's a new Jurassic Park 3D animated series on Netflix, and when the first thing you see the a black kid on that initial poster or whatever, and I was like, I'm checking this out, which I've already been burned so many times, but and without spoiling it, because I do like it. I'm on like the 5th episode. But without spoiling it, basically a black kid gets, wins a chance to go to, Jurassic Island or whatever they're calling it now. And he gets there and he's like the only black person. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so he's even though he's the main character, he's not centered. It's like blackness is not centered.
Yeah.
And it's we see it over and over, so we get a chance to do that differently. So why would we keep telling keep relying on the same tropes and the same imagery that that focuses on our pain and trauma?
Absolutely. Yeah, showing our people in a positive light and highlighting our resiliency and our ability to be successful despite so many obstacles in our way. That's just super empowering. And like as a young person, it's even more so why Sadaka, especially her being like 13-ish, is like when family went through some pretty crazy stuff too. We had a category 4 or 5 hurricane like pass over our island, and it destroyed it, right? Like destroyed it. We didn't have electricity for months. And so, we had like FEMA and National Guard come in, and I remember eating MREs and sleeping on cots, and all these things. Our house wasn't affected too much, but just like the community and like what everyone was going through, and just everybody pulling together to make sure that we survived. And people, we may not have had a lot, but everybody took care of each other. And how I never knew how those experiences would later help me, in as I became an adult, and when all these other types of different world challenges come to you personally, and while everybody else, most other people would be freaking out and stressed out about it, it's like okay, I made it through that storm, right? Like that. It's like, okay, well, there's very few things, other few things that would probably rock me kind of the same way. And to have it at such a pivotal point in terms of becoming a woman and all of those things um, is just powerful. And for us to be able to inspire the next generation, of young people coming up, young minds, and helping them to understand their greatness and their power earlier, so that they can then leapfrog even us, like, and accomplish these greater things even before we have. To me, is like that's the real goal. Like being successful as a creator is obviously important. We all have bills to pay, but for me, and I think I could probably say for people like you and other independent creators, the larger, more important goal is being that beacon for those who could be feeling like they're not represented, their voices are not being heard, mainstream ignores them, and like you mentioned, even if it's just my little podcast over here, like whatever each one of us can do, the collective will definitely be something for our kids to pull on. And you just never know like how it's going to impact somebody. Like those stories to me, like when people come up to you at a con and they tell you like a personal experience, like you really helped me in a difficult time, and those kinds of things, like that's like, oh, that's you made my day. Even if I don't sell nothing else today, like thank you.
Right. And I think what you said was beautiful, about making it through the storm. So one of the things that drives me insane is, when people say we are not our ancestors and blah, blah, blah. And, it's like you look down and like disrespectful at the people who, if they wouldn't have done what they would have done, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
I think that back in my time, because I'm old now, back in my time, we were taught, well, I can't say everybody, but I learned good things about my people. My grandmother used to tell me good things. She left out the fact that she got arrested for a sit-in. But I think that's because she knows I probably would have got arrested for something simple. But she taught me a lot of really good things about my people, and so there is, in a sense, you can get some pride, right? So it goes back to that thing, like, if you're teaching me that my people were slaves, that my people were subjugated, then it's hard to have pride in that. But that's not the only case, you know what I'm saying? You can go right down to Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, and you can see that they had like a district where it was, all black, and it was rolling, and it's still sitting. Like, you can go visit the house that Martin Luther King, grew up in, and it wasn't like a little shack. You know what I'm saying? It's like there were, we were thriving in certain areas, just in spite of everything. I mean, despite everything that was being held against us. And so I think stories like these, if people can see that resiliency, like you said, you can start to look at your people a little bit different and understand that every time they got thrown into a mud hole, they climbed their way out, and they kept going and they kept going. And when you really truly see the lengths that white supremacy went to to keep our people subjugated, like, you can understand, they were fighting a losing battle, but they still were fighting. And if we had the kind of fight that they had, things would be a lot different.
Absolutely. I mean, and we're still fighting, right? Because those obstacles haven't really gone anywhere. They're just hidden a little better now, right? It's not as in your face, except for right now during, it's kind of crazy right now. I actually worry. Like, I want to know where you stand,
Yeah.
But yeah, we won't go too far down that hole, because that could be a whole other podcast.
That's another, yeah.
Okay, so, and then one more question that we had from Alika Naihe, who sent the question in. One of his questions was, of all the stories that you wrote, what was your favorite, and what did writing, like the process of creation, what did it teach yourself about you?
So it's weird, man, because like I don't think I'm able to have favorites. They're kind of like kids. You have more than one kid. You love them, and you love them differently. So I love Tuskegee Heirs. It's the one that exploded, and it's still explosive and all that cool stuff. I love Tuskegee Heirs.
Yeah.
And I love collaborating with Marcus on it. Marcus and I, we've been doing stories and coming up with stuff for 20 years. So Tuskegee Heirs was kind of like our thing, where we knew what we could do, but we still had to show it. I love Sadaka because it was my chance. So with Marcus doing the art for Tuskegee Heirs, I don't really have to do much directing there. Whereas Sadaka, I had to learn more of a formal process of how to send a script. So I send a script to Illustrator, which is different than me and Marcus sitting there, and Marcus kind of saying, okay, right here, like I say, this needs to go in this panel, and then just let him go crazy.
Right.
So it was different. And then Sadako was also like it takes a long time to get these things done. And so it was cool from the standpoint that I love the story. I know where it's going, even though like no matter who reads whatever is out right now, they still don't understand what it's going to turn into. So I'm excited about that. Truthfully, my children's books, everything. I'm also working on a project with Jason Reeves right now, Beautiful's Barbecue. I'm loving that. I got a couple other projects that I'm not allowed to say real quick. So that's a lot of words to say that I love them all, and I love them differently. Like working with Jason has been great. It's fun. Like we're cracking up laughing half the time we're working. So all of them, I love them all. Just like I love all my kids.
Yes. All for different reasons and their unique characteristics. It's so true. All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. So again, now we talked about search for Sadaka today. Please, guys, check it out on Kickstarter. Just go to Kickstarter and search of Sadaka. I will post the link again in the comments for those to check out. I hope you guys enjoy the story as much as I do. And I hope you guys enjoyed learning more about Greg as the writer and understanding where he comes from and his perspective and what inspires him to create. So Greg, for folks who are watching, where's the best place for them to follow you online to stay connected with you?
Well, the way that these algorithms work these days, like I don't know, Instagram probably, which is Greg_Burnham. I'm saying that 7, and it's showing on the screen on the ticker. That's so cool. Yeah, so you can follow me there. I'm just Greg Burnham on Facebook. I have Greg Burnham book, which is dumb when I created the name, but on Twitter, and I've been yelled at and told that I have to start doing more things on Twitter. So if you want to give me a follow on there, that would be wonderful, because I'm going to actually start posting on there, because you only have to yell at me like 20 times before I figure out that it's probably important.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, all right. Well, thank you, Greg, for coming on the Moana Nui podcast. It was a pleasure. This has actually been one of my favorite interviews, obviously for different reasons. I love all my interviews, but we got to delve into the historical aspect of our podcast, and I got to take some notes so I can go down more rabbit holes on learning more about history. So we'll probably have a follow-on episode where we delve into some of those things and hopefully help you guys learn a little bit more about other lost tales and ancient heirs. So,
one more thing. Have you ever been to the Cahokia Mountains in St. Louis?
No, I have not. What is it called? Cahokia?
Cahokia, Cahokia. So I'm from Missouri. I live there, and my family's from there, and I never heard about these until I was like 37 or something. And so I went. It's actually outside of St. Louis on the Illinois side. They're dirt mountains. They're huge. They're awesome. Check it out.
I will definitely check that out. Yes. I love me some mountains.
Man-made. Man-made. They're man-made.
Oh, cool.
They're awesome. Yeah.
That's what's up. All right, y'all. Well, thank you again for joining us for another episode of the Moana Nui podcast. We hope you guys are safe and healthy. Stay cool, stay safe, stay warm, because it is getting pretty cool out there. This island girl is not quite ready, but I got my hoodie on. So let's do this. But again, mahalo nui. Thank you again, everybody. And until next time, aliho, malama pono. Take care.
Are you there? I can't hear you.
Okay.
Hello? Oh, I can hear you now.